A few days ago, a respected and noted elder statesman of gaming contacted me and said, "Hey, do you want to talk about the Malleus Monstrorum?" And I said, "Sure. And why not?" It seems to me that 3 or 4 years ago we got together to talk about our first impressions of Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. May have been longer than that, but a while ago, and then went on to form our own opinions about it after play. Well, here we are back again with another big slip-cased tome. Not quite as big as the core rules, but still, you know, pretty intense. And so, as the invitee to this conversation, I'm going to turn things over to Frank, who's here with me from the other side of the earth, almost perfectly. And so, Frank, what do you think about this new release?
Well, I think that it's amazing. Graphically, this is one of the most beautiful books in the series. Um, and by the way, just to let everybody know, yes, I even have the card deck. Um, but this is graphically probably the most beautiful, beautifully laid out books they have come up with. Inside the content, mwah, it is most excellent. Um,
Well, don't eat it.
oh no, no. I always like my chef's kiss, mainly because I do all the cooking around here, or at least the vast majority of
Right. With lots of tentacles, I will presume.
it. uh, I'm not telling,
The
but
secret's in the sauce.
yeah, no, but the content is phenomenal. This is really um, this reminds me a great deal. Not just the Malleus Monstrorum, but the Grand Grimoire that they came out with. In many respects, what's to me nowadays what sells a game system is the lore behind it. I know people. Well, I have a friend of mine who owns a bookstore. When Vampire the Masquerade first came out, she said that it was really amazing. All the housewives that would show up and buy the books, not because they wanted to play the game, but they liked reading the story. So
Yeah.
it was literature. This is the same thing right here with Malleus Monstrorum, for example. You don't have to play the game to enjoy this book. And right there, behind with chapter 1, as it were, behind you of the book on the gods, it's a fascinating essay.
Hmm.
And it illuminates not just the game, but it illuminates mythos itself. I mean, this is a very good concordance to have with you if you're reading Shadows over, Shadows over Innsmouth, or Shadows Out of Time, or whatever.
Right.
This is well worth the money.
Now, did you have the original from
Yeah, it's buried around
2006?
here. Yeah, it's buried around here somewhere. In fact, I've got the two books that Scott David and Yalowski wrote. I bought the originals, yeah. Then I bought that one that keeps floating around in the background. Uh,
Well, that's the 2006 one, yeah.
yeah, that's the 2006 one. Now, the one I keep hearing about, and I've never seen, is the German edition from Pegasus Spiel, which
Right.
is supposed to be just, I don't know if you have it or not, or if you've seen it. but that was supposed to be the one in the background. The 2006 edition was basically uh, according to some people, including Scott Clancy, who is a fellow voyager into the Mythos and one of the co-authors of Delta Green. Um, the 2006 edition was basically a pale. It's kind of a pale, in comparison. It was a pallid imitation, if you will. This one,
Well, a draft, not. I guess we could say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of go in a different direction with these kinds of books. I mean, I totally agree, 100%, that these are the sorts of books that sell. And I also agree that they tend to sell to the people who don't actually play, either because they can't. No one wants to play this game with me. We all have that game or that section on our shelf of the of the games that we like that we don't have a group for, which hopefully the internet is slowly erasing for people. But I think we all have games that we haven't played yet, but we keep buying for because we love it and we want to play it. So there's that, and there's the people who have simply no interest in playing at all ever, and buy it to support some other collection hobby, like they're horror fans, and this is an addition to their horror collection. It's not a part of their role-playing game collection, that kind of stuff. So I think these are absolutely dynamite in that regard. And of course, they're the killer app for the new player, right? So that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right?
Yeah.
Learn all those tips and tricks and approaches and or exposures to knowledge that other people came by some other way, right? But when I look at the grimoire, for example, or when I look at this book, as me with my library, I have to ask myself, do I need it? Do I want it? What does it add? That sort of stuff. And most of the time I find these days I'm saying, no, I don't need it. Right? Like I don't have a physical copy of the grimoire. My way of playing Call of Cthulhu doesn't take me in that direction. And I have the original spells and in other places. So that's not a book for me. But why did I get this one? And it's this essay, actually, which I appreciated very much in the original Malleus Monstrorum, that someone else was thinking along these lines. Right? I don't know about you, Frank, but when I encounter people that have played Call of Cthulhu, mostly I find that they're interested in playing shotguns versus shoggoths. And so when you put the word bestiary on something, it's monster manual, and they're looking for things to set up as a bug hunt or to kill. Has that been your experience?
Let me, yeah. And, it was actually, I didn't realize it when I first started running Call of Cthulhu. I started in 1981 when the game first came out.
Mm-hmm.
I have a first edition preserved in storage. I have a third edition preserved in storage. Why? Because Robert Bloch autographed it. So that gives you. That's just where I'm coming from.
Is that the box set or the Games Workshop hardcover?
The box set. And like I said, I had an opportunity to speak with him one-on-one for a considerable length of time at a convention.
Nice.
And I started running it, and I didn't quite realize at the time how heavily influenced I was by Raiders of the Lost Ark. So yeah, it came out pulp.
Well, that's totally cool, right? I mean, I'm not against running Call of Cthulhu in a pulp heroics vein. I am against the artificial distinction and the attempt to divide the fan base put out by, you know, Robin Laws and whatnot through Gumshoe about the pulps and the purists. I mean, that stuff is anathema. Like, we don't need any help tearing ourselves apart. We need, more focus coming together. We all like the Mythos. So let's play Mythos games the way we want to play them with people who want to play them that way. Or, it's kind of nutty to create this distinction. The thing is, if we have our adventure set up as a bug hunt, working our way through a collection of monsters as you would if you were preparing a fantasy increasing of power level kind of dungeon crawling kind of situation. If we approach it that way, what effect will that have on atmosphere? I mean, there was a lot of fear in Raiders of the Lost Ark. There was a lot of fear in Temple of Doom, right? Less fear in The Last Crusade, more moral examination, I guess we could say, right? But there's fear, there's atmosphere, there's risk, there's that sense of did something occult just happen here? What were we touched by some other worldly experience? There's a lot there that can tie us to a mythos story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But does Indy punch his way through a band of Biaki and then work his way through the deep ones and then climb over some ghouls and then sail through the dreamlands and then take out some gugs and then climb back up? You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Yes, I do. And I give a very valid point. When I look at how it's run, well, first of all, one of the things I do is I sit down with my prospective players and I ask them, what would you like in this game? What would you like to see? And my wife, who is one of my players,
mm-hmm.
and that's got to be a hoot, and it is. It's pretty nice. She likes high fantasy. She likes, the sword and the whole aspect of, yes, the good guys are going to win, and she likes that, and I'm all for that. It's fun to run them. So
how would you use this new 2-volume set to satisfy that urge?
You do basically. Now I've got Pulp Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Now let's say that I wanted to do Cthulhu Dark Ages, which if you want to do dark fantasy, that's a really good system. But I throw in the pulp aspect, that double the hit points, this, that, and the other. Pulp it up a little bit, so suddenly you've got.
It's my contention that the 7th edition really should have been Pulp Cthulhu.
Yeah, I tend to take it. I can make it as pulp as I want it. So yeah, how I use them. Here's another how I would use it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let me give you a quick and dirty. In my researches, I do historical miniatures, tabletop gaming.
Right.
Dark Ages. And I came across mention of a group or a tribe in Britain called the Atacati. And what little survived of the writings of them, apparently these people, the men would go into combat naked, painted with the blood of their enemies. They practiced cannibalism. They treated their women horribly. Women were just common property. Well, the first thing that I realized, from historically, the Celtic people, women weren't treated like that. They weren't cannibals, and yes, they had tattoos, and yes, but then who are these people? Okay, so they're a cult. They're not a tribe, they're a cult. And then, of course, I dove a little bit into one of the most bizarre references around, and that is the Amarandu, the Black Fairy, the Death Fairy, the Death Jester. Okay, what Cthulhu Mythos entity immediately comes to mind when you hear Death Jester, Hastur? Because after all, every king needs a jester, don't they? And so anyway, okay. Of course, in the Dark Ages book, they have the Kushi, which are the people who worship the lords of Tindalos. All right, so I'm like, all right, let's make a connection there. Malleus Monstrorum gives you like 3 or 4 different entities from that particular group. You've got the Hounds of Tindalos, Tindalosian hybrids, the Lords of Tindalos, and finally another one of these jaw-twisting, make my dentures drop out named, who is considered the Great Wolf, the basically the god of Tindalos, the Lord of Tindalos. Wow.
But not only that, they give us ways to create our own, tailor make your own entity for whatever idea. You don't have to go searching for the perfect one. You can, tailor make the perfect connection between your real world lore and your fictional lore, with a certain degree of confidence, I think.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is the whole how to create your own mythos monsters. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the age system from Green Ronin.
Yep.
They've got a lot of that in there too. How to boost the creature from the description book, how to make it worse, how to make it more powerful. And that to me is where one of the neat ideas come in that you work with Malleus Monstrorum. Oh, it's just a Byakhee. No, it's not. It's a big bad Byakhee. Especially when you hit the, as we used to call them, gun bunnies. And for the longest time, early D&D, if you looked at the, I used to joke about, I want to play a wizard. Really? Yeah, I want to be the heavy weapons gunner of the party. What, you tell me cast fireball isn't really a magic term for plasma gun? That's what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, you. It sounds like you like to root your play, whether it's a session, like a one shot, or if it's a lengthier investigation or a campaign. It sounds like you like to root it in a little bit of real history, a little bit of mythos lore, and a little bit of your own imagination to tie everything together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the ideal use for this product.
Yeah.
And you'll wind up using like this much of it for whatever that project is.
Yeah.
Whether it's 3 sessions or 30 sessions, you're just going to use this little slice of it. So it's somewhat misnamed as a bestiary, right? It's not a monster manual. It's more like a game master's companion, that kind of thing.
And not only that, but I don't know if you have these. but these are the Call of Cthulhu. This is Malleus Monstrorum. And quite honestly, from what you say, you could probably just buy this, and you've got you got what you need at your fingertips.
For statistics and things, one thing I really like about the way the book is designed, particularly the deities book, is how much effort was invested in making it easier for you as the keeper to be vague.
Yes.
Especially if you find yourself like not able to remember the pronunciation of something, or if you have, I don't know, a lack of confidence about your own improvisation, or I haven't read enough Lovecraft to whatever. They give you so many different like memory hooks of sometimes called this, also called this, and this is what their cult is normally like, right? But not always. It's not exactly this. It's this kind of organization who do these kinds of things in these kinds of places, And I just find this to be very satisfying from the lessons that I've learned playing Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah. Yes. One of the things that I really enjoy and I like about this book is it gives me the ability to really, really set up a good investigation. To me, one of the most amazing things, I believe it's a short story called The Barrens. And talks about the New Jersey Pine Barrens, if you're familiar with that. But the idea is you get the players out there eventually, and they're standing around, say, on a hilltop. They're like, "What just happened?" And one of them's maybe just melting down because of what they saw, or But it's that wonderful feeling. It's like the first time I saw the Pacific Ocean. I was in the military. I was stationed in California at Fort Ord, and I looked out at that ocean and just the eeriness. But it was, how do I describe it? Beautiful eeriness. If that makes any sense. It was not a terrifying eeriness. It was a beautiful eeriness. Well, that's really part of what I like, and to instill the idea that something happened here. Of course, it could get really nasty, but and for me, I tend to avoid certain direct topics in my game running, the very unpleasant ones. I'm not a real big fan of splatterpunk, for example.
Right.
I've seen in real life what happens when you shoot somebody with an assault rifle. Thank you, Vietnam. It's not pretty.
Right. So it's not a part of your play, and it doesn't, of course, need to be a part of Mythos play.
No,
at all.
not at all. And because you have to really, to me, you have to really be careful of lines. Bear what can trigger people, and that sort of thing. That's why my wife doesn't watch horror movies. She won't
That's why a
watch
lot
them
of people don't watch horror movies.
let's just say she's a trauma victim, and it's still with her after all these years. And that's about as far as I'm prepared to go with that. But just to let you know, so you really have to. And what this can do for me and help me with is make these creatures mysterious.
Yeah.
Make them out there. I mean, us old grognards in Cthulhu Mythos investigation go, oh yeah, it's just a Biaki. Hand me the 12 gauge. We'll get rid of this.
Yeah.
It shouldn't
Not
be
very
like,
interesting play.
yeah. And I call that Cthulhu Busters. Yeah, and that could be fun. And that
Sure. I
also
think a
works
lot of
real.
people play it for comedy, to be honest.
Yeah, I played one for comedy. A friend of mine that I met at Necronomicon up in Providence, a young lady, she ran one, and she ran it for laugh, and it was very successful, very enjoyable. And I told my wife about it, and she's like, "Yeah, I'd play in that." You know. Also, too, when you're running a convention game, it's a one shot.
Right.
So yeah, you pulping it up is probably the better way to go. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the scenario I wrote called "Jump into Darkness." U.S. Army paratroopers, World War II, on a training mission in England. Well, actually, they're coming back from one, fully loaded. This was just prior to the landings in North Africa in 1942. And it would have been a pleasant, it would have been just a routine flight home at night, except, of course, for the hunting horror that the plane happened to run right into, and they're running around in the middle of remote England in the Pennines, the mountains there, with this hunting horror chasing them. And I've run that at least 3 times at conventions, and it's interesting the different responses.
Hmm.
The last time I ran it was at Necronomicon in Providence. Everybody had a ball, and the first thing that says is, "Oh, look at all the guns Frank just let us have. Holy crap." Yeah. But yet the idea was, even though this thing was a monstrous thing and they could barely make it out, through the mist and the fog, the leader of the group, the NCO in charge, just looks around and goes, "Let's hunt this damn thing. Oh, why wait till it comes after us?" And the funny thing is, Anthony, and the really cool thing is, that's probably just about how a U.S. paratrooper would think. Screw this. I'm not waiting around for this thing. I'm going after it.
Well, they don't
Because,
know what game is being played.
no, they
I'm a
don't.
I'm a strong proponent of doing what the character would do if it were real, and rather than what's the way to win this game kind of thing. But so from that point of view, one of the things that persuaded me to get the game, not just in PDF, but actually, to have the physical product, is not the cover art. It's not the slipcase set. It's not that it matches or any of that stuff, right? I'm not convinced it needed to be 2 volumes, or any of those things, right? But it supports a learning process for new keepers that
Yes.
I tend to agree with, and I like the fact that the art inside is minimal. There's some ideas to get you going, and maybe to prevent complaints from purchasers, but all the way through, it's saying, play down the role of sight in your descriptions. Talk about the other senses. Be vague. Don't describe the same entity the same way twice. And I really find this to be valuable, and for the large number of people who will pick up what they perceive to be the player's guide, the dungeon master's guide, and the monster manual,
Yeah.
there is now a pretty good opportunity for the game to speak to them about playing it a different way.
Yeah. Most definitely.
And for the younger players, there's a fantastic set of skills that can be picked up here and that can be applied to any game about how to use language to describe things and not just say there is an X standing 5 feet away. There's a giraffe 5 feet away, right? There's a 4-legged creature in shades of tan and orange with, this,
Right.
you know, there's a lot
Yeah.
of different skills that this book can help actualize, and introducing vagueness into it is, I think, its real strength. There's no picture. There are multiple names which may not agree. There are different organizations. There are different times and places and things associated with them. It's phenomenal in that regard. So for that reason, I support it. And when I pass on my library, it may be the cool thing that they find. Whoever
Yeah,
gets
I
to
hope.
read it.
Yeah, I'm. I already know who my library is being passed to. Uh, my adopted daughter and her husband. They're both big time. In fact, my child cat is a phenomenal artist and writer. And yeah, to let you know, I'm the well, sort of. I guess we adopted each other. It's not official, but they're my family.
Sure.
They're part of my family. So for Christmas, what does Dad give his kids? Slipcase Delta green set.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
And well, she loves it. She thinks it's cool, and
Yeah.
even if they don't play the game, the mythos, the lore in there is amazing.
Right.
It's like here. It's why Warhammer 40K, for example, has lasted as long as it has. The lore. That's a very fully realized universe. It's one I wouldn't want to play in, but no, I tried Warhammer years ago, and I still play Kill Team, by the way. So I'm not a complete old dweeb.
But Warhammer is another good example. Like if we take Call of Cthulhu as a base template, right? You can do investigations using the Lovecraft mythos, right? And then we look at Delta Green. Delta Green is another campaign framework connected to that. Like, okay, well let's take this in a slightly different direction. What if these certain circumstances are met, and what if now you're part of this grand conspiracy?
Yeah.
All right. And we're not going to focus on so much maybe the lone protagonist in short scenarios. We're going to look at a longer series of related missions, and we're going to really focus on the family and friendship breakdown as you have to make compromising decision after compromising decision in order to protect these people who now don't even want to talk to you. I mean, I think this is really fascinating. It's the same core with an entirely different play experience, and it benefits from the non-descriptive description, the vagueness that so excites me here.
Yeah, again, to give you an idea, people have asked me, well, which do you like? Which do you prefer, Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu? My answer is yes.
Right. Yeah. Of course, there's the perception that Delta Green is what I was talking about before of shotguns versus Shoggoths. And, there can be that aspect, just like you were talking about earlier with hunting down the hunting horror. And there are Lovecraft protagonists in Lovecraft stories who solve their problems with a gun, sort of. Right.
Yeah, usually it's
Well, there's that way, but there's also
yeah.
When you gunning down your relatives that have been devolved into other creatures, but and that sort of thing. But
yeah,
the
when you
way it's presented, the atmosphere in which it's presented, the way it's received, the way that we interact with each other. Not saying, "Oh, it's just a Byakhee, hand me the 12 gauge," for example, would be nice. Of course, on the other hand, as the keeper, if you've given them Byakhee to deal with, or as some aspect of the setting so many times that they recognize them and recognize their statistics, let's say, then there's a failing there that a huge volume like the Malleus Monstrorum might help might help overcome. But,
Yes. Yeah, I know. It's for me. We have the whole Guns Against Cthulhu, and that speaks to, I think, a lot of the literary tradition of sword and sorcery, Conan, and even as recently as on the screen, uh, you remember the movie Predator, the first one with Arnold
yeah,
Schwarzenegger? That great line in there, "It bleeds, we can kill it."
yeah,
You know, and that's really the essence. Hey, it bleeds, we can kill it. And that's what they also saw in the World War II adventure that I wrote. They could actually see some of the damage that the M1 rifles were and machine guns and stuff were doing to the, hey, we can hurt this thing. And suddenly you're not afraid of it anymore. Suddenly the fear kind of drops because it's like, we can hurt it. Yeah, let's kill it.
yeah,
And while that's fun for a one shot, that's kind of what you don't want to do. That's sort of in the same way when you have the long running campaign with a group of investigators who all decide to show up to question the witness. Suddenly you've got six people standing there on your front doorstep going, "Where were you?" or "What did you see on the night?" I'm like, that's me. I'm grabbing Mr. Mossberg and saying, "Talk about getting the 12 gauge. You got 10 seconds to get the hell off my porch or I'm calling the cops,
right.
you know, to come pick
So
up your bodies."
there's a lot to be said to grounding yourself in what we are trying to imagine and make it real. And so there's a lot of aspects in the Malleus Monstrorum which should help make people or should help people make that to be an easier thing to do, or
Yeah.
help them learn to do it more easily. Any downsides, like missing pages
Not
or
that I could tell,
cracked
although
spine?
no, the only thing I do say is I really wish they differentiate the entries a little better, because you have a lot of pages of text where it'll finish and suddenly it's like, wait a minute, what's this?
Oh,
Oh, we're on a new topic. And
yeah.
that to me is minor. I just
On a related note, um, the entries, because they are so full, uh, tend to spread across multiple pages.
yeah.
This is another. This is two of three pages on Gahatnathwa, right? That's going around behind me. Is it possible for this to fit on two pages? Who knows? But
Yeah.
modern Chaosium seems to want to be very expansive in page count, and
Like I said,
gives a
use
very
these.
gives a, yeah, but that's not the part of it that I want. I want the other part that's in the book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, the page. I, by the way, think modern Chaosium, since Sandy Peterson and company took it back over, has just blossomed wonderfully. I love their products. I've got a whole shelf full of all the seventh editions. I've got Berlin, The Wicked City, which is an amazing piece of
lots
work.
of praise for that book. Yeah.
And I've got, well, it's not from Chaosium, but I've got Cthulhu Invictus from Golden Goblin.
Oscar Rios
And
does some pretty fantastic stuff. Yeah.
boy, it's just amazing. You, if nothing else, I can read it as almost like a textbook on life in ancient Rome during the Four Good Caesars. Oh, okay. Um, and it's also inspirational. They do a lot of stuff that really inspires, throws out story hooks, gets you thinking about things. Um, and the same way I think with, like with Delta Green, you know.
Mm.
But as I said, Delta Green is modern grimdark, and that's what I tell people. You play this game, there are no winners. It's just a
Right.
matter of time before you break. before you
And,
just say I've had enough. I remember years ago, one of my first efforts at playing a female character. I played a flapper in the 1920s. Now, nowadays I wouldn't, because it's like, I'm really, not that I have any objections to it at all, uh, because, if you've seen my page, I'm very pro human rights, trans, and, you know, and besides, a couple of the best Mythos people are trans. Stygian Fox's owner, Stephanie McClay, a wonderful human being, great, terrific person. Plus, she speaks Welsh. Wow. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, the ultimate outcome for my flapper was that her boyfriend had just been killed by a cult, and all that, and it just washed over her to the point where she ended the game, her participation in the game. Like, she's sitting on the sidewalk in New Orleans, propped against the wall. The rain is coming down. She just reaches in her purse and goes, "I'll bleep it." Bam! And I did this voluntarily because this is, and people are
it
like,
made sense.
It made sense for the character. Yeah. And also, it was just, it was for the other, a couple of the other players said that was the scariest part of the adventure. Was to see what depths you could, your human being could be driven to, where they're like, death is a blessing. I'm out of here. Better luck next time. So,
sadly, that's what I have to say now. Not that I want to blow my brains out, but that I have to depart. I must move on to my next task. But thanks for getting up early and talking with me.
Yeah, let's do this again. This again.
Pick a topic.
I don't have to think of it now. I've got a couple of them in mind.
Okay.
Including Delta Green.
Delta Green. So I think stands head and shoulders out there these days in terms of writing and art direction. It's maybe not a coffee table book for all families because of the topics.
I was going to say, wow. If it's your family's coffee table book, who are you, the Whateleys?
Exactly. Anyway.
So, yeah.
Thanks for talking to me, my friend.
Yeah.
And I will talk to you soon.
You got it. Bye-bye.